Welcome to the Hard Water Fishing Show. Jeff and Jason talk tactics, gear, and ice fishing legends.
We are alive, Hard Water Fishing Show, Season 5, Episode 8. It is the final week of 2021.
Holy cow.
I know. We've got 8 episodes in, and we are excited about our topic this week, Jay.
I'm very excited. I'm finally excited, too. On our 8th episode, I actually caught a fish since the last episode.
Whoop, whoop.
I mean, that's been a long run.
It has been. So, in celebration of your fish, what else are we talking about tonight?
Oh, so we have Max Losche on, and this is what makes it an international edition. He is the head content creator and owner of Strike and Catch, a website and a Facebook page, and he does a lot of writing, and he is from Sweden, which is super cool. So we'll talk to him later in the show.
But don't worry, he speaks English, so for our listeners, you don't have to know Swedish to listen to the podcast or the interview.
Yeah, we didn't even actually ask him to talk in his Swedish language.
Yeah, I think he might have immigrated into Sweden, though. He said maybe he lived in another country before that.
He did. But I'm assuming he speaks all the languages.
I would assume the same thing.
So, moving forward, Jeff, what are you drinking tonight?
Okay, I've got something a little exotic tonight.
To go along with the international edition.
It is. This is very international. In fact, it is out of this world.
You've got Moon Beer?
I have. It's made by Three Floyds Brewing Corp. It has new horizons of flavor. It is an American Pale Ale. And the name of this American Pale Ale is Space Station Middle Finger.
Space Station Middle Finger.
And there is an image of the space station, and the end of it looks like the middle finger.
What? Where was this brewed, Jeff?
It is brewed Munster, Indiana.
Huh.
Three Floyds Brewing, LLC, Munster,
Indiana. They're so angry at the space station.
I don't know either, but they gave it the middle finger. Space station middle finger.
All right. Okay. All right. Open this
up. Here we go. Tastes good. A mild IPA. That's what I would describe it as.
So kind of like month-old carpet.
Yeah, I don't know. I enjoy IPAs. I know you don't. But I tend to get IPAs. I don't like... It's not all I drink.
You like stories. You like stories on your beer.
It's not all I drink.
Notorious for story time.
I know. It's not all I drink, but people tend to give me... Some people don't like IPAs like you. Mm-hmm. So, like over Christmas... we tend to get beer as gifts quite a bit. I don't know. We just get different beers, crafty beers. And my brother-in-law doesn't like IPAs. So he's like, what do you have in your fridge? I'll trade you IPAs for something else. So I end up with all these IPAs in my fridge. So
you have like an IPA rescue program.
Yeah, that's right. I traded a couple spotted cows for a couple IPAs.
That's awesome.
So yes.
Okay. Yeah. So my beer, once again, has come to me from an interesting source tonight. So this came from my younger brother to you and to me, delivered on a lake.
Yeah, I brought this beer to you.
You did. And I've been on the old man beers, and I had the Bud Light problem. We're not going to go into depths on that.
The Bud Light fiasco.
We'll call it an incident. The incident.
Bud Light Gate?
Budgate?
Budgate?
I don't know. Anyway, so is this an old man beer, Jeff? Or we're just going to call it...
I don't know what you call it.
Well, I'm drinking it in hopes tonight. So this is a Milwaukee's Best Ice, which is good beer. And I'm drinking it in hopes that the word ice will help ice form where I live. Jeff, just before we got on the show tonight, we had thunderstorms roll through.
Oh, boy.
We had lightning and thunder. And then it was at least a little sleety hitting the windows of the house. I mean, it's not looking good.
It is snowing as we speak outside. We are in a winter storm warning.
We did not. So. I did not. Well, that would explain. You're further north, but I got sleet and thunderstorms here. So, all right, here we go. All right, let's try this here. Yeah, that's good. I made sure it was nice and cold too, which I think is the key to Milwaukee's best ice.
I'm sure it's been cold and warm at least 5 times, considering it sat in my car on the way down.
Who knows where it came from that? Like, it's possible it rolled around the back of his pickup for a while, or was up at the cabin over the summer when his buddies were up. I mean, who knows? But it's good. The price was perfect.
Perfect. Well, and when you get them delivered to you, it kind of has more special meaning.
It took so much restraint to not drink that beer when we were fishing.
On the ice, yeah.
On the ice. But I have a lot of people look at me and they know I have self-control.
All right. Well, I think we lamented over our beer beverages tonight, so we should talk about patrons. So excited to announce we have a new patron. So Wire Hair supported the show at the Weekend Warrior level. So thank you to Wire Hair for that support. Thank him and all the other patrons that we have. We actually have, some special benefits to that, and we'll be doing those coming up here real soon for patrons, like monthly Zoom call, or also access to our little chat area that's a little more private than on the Facebook page. So if you wanted to be part of those, you can find patron information on our website.
Wonderful. And thanks you to everybody.
And show business. So you can use our Amazon affiliate link if you want to support the show. We get tiny little bit from some of the things that if you buy something from Amazon, we get a little help for the show there. You can buy our merch, like our sweatshirts and hats and that kind of stuff on find a link to our merch on our website. You can also interact with us on Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah, I want to talk about that for a minute, just real quick. So on Instagram, people have started tagging us in certain posts that they do, like on their story or whatever. And I really appreciate that, because then if you're a listener and I can, then it notifies me and I can go out and look at your stuff. And, because how these algorithms work, you follow a bunch of people and I have no way to keep up on listener content. So if you tag us, then I can go look at it. And then, but I want to challenge everybody, when you get a big fish, please use that hashtag #OutfishJeff. I'm really trying to grow that this year.
You're trying to grow that, whether or not it's true or factual.
It's all factual.
Okay.
It wouldn't be, It wouldn't be true if it wasn't on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. You can find all of our information on hardwatershow.com, our website. And we do have a YouTube page where I mainly put our video versions of the podcast, but there's a few other different videos out there too. And you can also email us at hardwatershow@gmail.com. So that's how you can get a hold of us and find us out there. This is kind of a big announcement, Jay. Just in current events. This one's pretty big, right?
So we're gonna go to an event. I don't know how else to say it.
We will be there, both of us.
We're gonna be there in person. So there's a lot of people in fishing named Max, apparently, which is really interesting. But another Max from Hardwater Freaks, has been putting on with his group ice fishing event and over in Wisconsin, right, Jeff?
Yes. Yep.
And what they do is they put on the Hardwater Freaks annual ice event, and they do it in partnership for their main beneficiary, which is the Wisconsin Wounded Warrior United, which is a nonprofit organization to give back to veterans and engaging them in the hunting and fishing, which is super cool. And so all the proceeds from this event go to help them. And I think is there some other things that they benefit? I know the Wounded Warrior Project for sure.
I think it was like Fishing from the Heart was the other one.
I think that was it.
Yes.
And so we're gonna be at the event. We got our tickets bought, cars packed. Well, maybe not yet.
Well, maybe not cars packed yet, but
we're gonna head over there. We're gonna podcast from the event, probably do some interviews with some folks, and of course, we're gonna do some fishing too.
So Jay, when is the event?
Oh, good question. January 29th. Saturday. And so if you cruise on over to Hardwater Freaks Facebook page or even ours, I think we'll probably link it up on ours too. You'll be able to find a link to the event. So it should be a good time. I think they had over 400 people participate last year.
Yeah, and I think tickets were like $25.
$25.
And there's a limited number, so
I think. Is there a limited number? I might have just told you that to get your ticket bought.
When I signed up, it said there was less than 90 available.
Okay, because there was 99 when I signed up.
Yes.
So there you go.
Yes.
That's what I know.
Yes.
And if not, if Max listens to our show, he'll fact check us. If we
yes, we'll get some
we
fact
screwed
checks.
something up, we'll be notified and we'll fix it.
Brandon T wrote us. He sent me a picture of this northern. I'm like, wow, that's a really big looking northern. You know, and sometimes in pictures you can't tell how big things are, right? It's kind of, but it looked big. So I said, how big was that? And Brandon goes, oh, it was 38 inches and 19 pounds. I'm like, that's a big northern.
Was that a United States northern, or was that caught in some other country? Was it like a Manitoba northern, maybe?
It might have been in Canada, but I can't remember for sure. So this sounds like your mileage may vary on the fact checking of that. I'm sure Brandon can send us a message and tell us if we were right or wrong on that. So
regardless, I would tell you that is a hog.
Yes.
Wow.
We've seen big northerns come through a hole like that before. It is crazy. Crazy.
Yeah, because you got to put your hand on there, but you don't want to put your hand down there.
Yeah, I've seen blood everywhere, not from the fish.
I mean, it's like, okay, this is going to hurt, but this is what's got to happen kind of a situation.
Yep. Yeah. It's kind of, you have to question yourself. What am I going to do? Right?
Northerns weren't made for noodling, like catfish, where you just stick your hand in their mouth.
Noodling. Not if you want to keep your arm.
Do not do that. Do not. Oftentimes they say mileage, do what you want, but do not stick your hand in a northern's mouth.
But you're not going to get one of those out with without an assist.
You're going to need an assist. Or
I would think,
unless you're fishing with like 100-pound braid and big treble hooks, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe one of those mesh gloves. Like if you had a mesh glove, like Shark Week. You
should try that first, because I'm not convinced.
Chainmail glove.
Still not convinced it wouldn't poke you. Okay. So we'll get you a glove and we'll give it a try.
Kevlar.
Maybe. I think that's more for
bullets. Do they make Kevlar gloves?
I think that's more for bullets.
Oh, well.
I don't know.
And northern teeth. Don't know.
I have no idea.
We're going to get a ton of fact checks on this. We're talking about stuff we don't even know what we're talking about.
We have
here.
No idea. This episode's already headed in an interesting. Thankfully, when we talk to Max, I think it'll all.
Yes,
buddy from Sweden. There, it'll all square away.
So we got a message from Lisa G, and I had to kind of reach out on this one, right? Because it was follow up to when we talked to Colby. So Lisa asked, I enjoyed the interview with Colby. I was especially curious, as both a fly and ice angler, were there any fly techniques or tricks that he uses for ice? And she said, I'm up in Alaska and have fun jigging flies under the ice, woolly buggers, and beaded nymphs with good success. Because we can't use any live bait to ice fish in Alaska, I guess. So Lisa asked this question. So I had to reach out to Colby. So I sent him a message to Colby because I don't know what a woolly bugger is, nor a beaded nymph.
I know what both of those things are. I had a brief fly fishing phase.
There you go. Yeah.
Very brief.
Very brief. So Colby said, I messaged him and he said he uses the VNC bull flying jig for both applications, fly fishing and ice fishing. No bait, just the fly or jig. When using a woolly bugger, I usually jig up and then let it flutter down like you would with a normal fly application.
Wow, that was a great question, and now I've learned something. I have to go find my fly box, because I think I've got some of those.
Well, I don't know what a woolly bugger looks like, but it sounds like something I should be fishing with.
Maybe.
I appreciate Colby willing to answer, because I was like, no clue. So
I know it's always fun when people ask us questions and then they realize we really don't know anything.
Although I would love to go fishing in Alaska. I mean, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it would. That's amazing to me. So you think we've talked very lightly about regulations and the rules over the years on this show.
Yep.
And so it's interesting. You can't use live bait to ice fish where this person lives in Alaska. And, to me, Alaska is kind of like this huge wilderness.
Right.
But you can't use live bait.
I know.
And you can use live bait in Minnesota.
Totally.
So is that mean Alaska's more regulated? Maybe. I suppose. I have no idea. Or maybe it's just, I don't know. Don't know.
And then
it's just
in
interesting.
Canada, I know there's places in Canada you can't have barbs on your hooks.
Yeah.
Yes, there's lots of rules, and make sure you know what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good point. Just to interject that, just because we talk about a technique here on the show, because I live in Iowa, you live in Minnesota, so it's something we do. Doesn't mean it's legal in your state or part of the world. So just make sure you check, because we wouldn't want anybody to run afoul of the people, the game wardens, or the people out there protecting the natural resources. So
yes, I may have been checked by such a person in the recent week. So.
And,
came out okay.
And you came out good? You were doing what you
Yes.
should have been doing. Well, wonderful.
Yes,
good for you.
we were all good, no problems. But
good for you. That's lovely.
I passed the test.
I'm sure everybody was happy, including them.
I'm sure they were. She moved on to the next hut. So
Perfect. Perfect.
Jason, you know how people have funky names like our patron Wirehair. Okay, so this person this is somebody ski hunts.
Yeah, Trzebiatowskihunts.
Trzebiatowskihunts? Trzebiatowskihunts.
Because
it sounds bad.
This came from Instagram, wasn't it?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
it
so it's
sounds
his
pretty
handle
easy
on
when
it.
you say it, Trzebiatowskihunts.
I have no
But
idea
when you
if I
see it
said it
written
right.
down, you're like, oh my gosh.
This is one of those you just have to say and you can't sound out.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if I did it right. So let's move on to the content.
Yeah. So he is a young listener. He's been hunting and open water fishing since he could walk, getting more into ice fishing. He's on a very tight budget, but he has poles and a shack and that kind of thing. So he hasn't had much luck. He spent about 10 hours on the ice targeting pike and walleye, but he asked for some help or tips.
Well, you've had some similar experiences this year. So
Yes.
so I guess, so he's looking for advice.
He's looking for advice. Yeah.
If I had to give him some, without knowing specifically where he's fishing, if you're listening, if you want to send us like what lake you're fishing, what area you're fishing in, we could try to figure out if we can connect you with someone that might be able to give you some intel. Otherwise, what I would say is head down to your local bait shop and talk to them and tell them what you're trying to do and where you're fishing, and see if they can give you some pointers. If you've got a map of the lake you want to fish, print something out or put it on your phone, and take it down there and show it to them and say, this is where I'm going. Can you give me a couple spots to start? I think that would be maybe the best way. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I would agree. That's a good way. Another thing, don't feel bad. Like,
yeah, exactly.
We go out and don't do well sometimes too. So
oh my
10
God,
hours,
so many times.
I've spent many more than 10 hours. If you want to catch some pike, typically I find these lakes there's kind of pike crappie lakes, right? They're different than like a walleye lake sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes they commingle, sometimes they don't. But I would find that kind of like maybe more of a marshy, a shallower lake where you can set up tip-ups right along the weed line that you can see like cattails or something. That's always good. I would try that. Walleyes are harder, but find a good lake. You're going to want to make sure there's actually walleyes in some number that you can target them, because some lakes don't have enough walleyes to target. So I would use those two things. I would get out there. We found this when we were out this week. Sometimes just going to a lake, usually people don't want to like broadcast information on the internet. But if you're on the lake, I've had tons of people this year helpful to me, like, hey, do you fish this lake very often? Where do you fish? Usually people will share, as long as you don't, fish next to them, as long as you give them some space. They're usually pretty helpful, especially to a younger person, right? I would just get out there, find a lake where you think you can have success, look on the internet, whatever. I mean, Red Lake, Lake of the Woods, Mille Lacs, but there's other smaller lakes too in every area that are going to have. If you have 10 lakes in your area, one of them is going to be kind of the go-to lake, right?
Yeah,
so I would do that. That would be my recommendation.
And I've got one more piece of advice. I was just thinking about locally, and I think the state he's in, and most states have, they have your enforcement folks, but they also have fishery folks. Yeah. So the DNR fisheries, Department of Natural Resources fisheries, that manage all those fisheries. And most of those folks are more than willing to share information and say, hey, near you, go to this lake. And they might not say where on the lake, but they'll say, go to this lake, and there's a good population of X in that lake. Because they want to see people be successful fishing, because that's part of their whole job is to help that. So they're more than willing to share information. So you can find those folks on the internet. You reached out to us, so that's a great start. I know that you're willing to do that. So reach out to them as well. And I think between all that, and if you have some success, absolutely get back to us. We'd sure love to see it, see pictures.
No, I think that's great advice. I mean, and again, I would say don't feel bad. 10 hours. I mean, sometimes you don't have a good day. Try it again. There was an interesting article in Outdoor News written by Vic Attardo. Old tricks still work. There's a couple things that I thought was interesting. And the article was good, and I would encourage everybody to get the Outdoor News. We don't make any money off of it. It's just I love getting them on the Friday and reading all the great articles in there. And this time of year, it's all about ice fishing. But he said that something he learned was putting minnows in like a jar and putting them down the hole. And I mean, I would check your regs on this. I don't know what the rules are, but like, you put your minnows in the hole, like at the bottom.
Like all the way to the bottom of the ice?
Yeah, at the bottom of the lake.
I suppose you spoos?
Spoos. I don't know what that means.
I suppose you put water in the jar?
I would assume you would put water in the jar.
Like
yes.
a bell, like a diving bell for minnows.
You could try the bottom open, but I'm guessing there wouldn't be any minnows when you pulled it back up.
I'm trying to envision this. So you it's such a old trick, because do you carry a lot of glass jars around with you?
Well, Vic Attardo said that he had a rig just for this.
Really?
And he said it worked, and he should bring it back. So,
well, I'm not doubting. I'm not doubting this guy at all. It's just I'm trying to put this together in my mind. Okay, give it a try and report back. That's what I always say. Give it a try and report back. That's code for I don't want to try it, but someone should.
Yes, exactly. Yes. The other thing he said was about shocking the minnows. If you get your bait and the water's warm, and then you put your minnow in the cold water, sometimes they get shocked and aren't as active, and sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad. I don't know, but he suggested like kind of mixing the water with the lake water in your bait bucket so that they kind of get used to the temperature of the water.
Okay, that sounds cool.
So then also, kind of in the same Outdoor News episode, John Trelawney said about staying warm in the ice from head to toe. He had a long article in there about that, and some of the things we've talked about, the same kind of things before. But one thing was talking about keeping warm and what you eat before you go ice fishing. And he said that
now you're getting into my language here.
John said that you should eat carbs like oatmeal or pancakes better than like heavy like protein meals, because you need some energy in the morning, and it's harder to digest that proteins than it is carbs. So, which kind of makes sense. So
we should carb load
before you ice fish is what
pancakes.
John says.
Hear that, Oli? Pancakes, oatmeal, donuts.
We're talking about little Oli here.
Little Oli.
Yes.
Donuts, apple fritters.
So
like
some other
that.
things, and we've talked a lot about warm stuff, but for me, we both talked about bibs. You got a new set of bibs this year, and I have had mine for a couple of years, but we talked about how we don't even wear long handles anymore because the bibs are so much nicer. We don't have to.
Yeah, they're warm enough. Now, yeah.
Now, if it's like 30 below, you might have to
maybe,
reassess.
but I would say anything like 10 degrees and up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one other trick I always do, I can't live without toasty toes. You introduced those to me.
I know. I regret that. I have many regrets.
They can get warm, but you just have to keep them going and you'll be good. Toasty toes in the bottom of your boots. Oh.
Yeah, and that's where you have to watch your socks because, man, if you overheat your feet, then they sweat. So there's kind of that balance of dancing with the devil on the toasty toe deal.
Well, you just have to keep them going. You don't want to let them run out. They usually last 8 hours. Most of the time you're good to go. Another thing it made me think of is, I know you wear gloves a lot, but I almost exclusively wear like mitts, right? Like mittens. I don't know if we can call them mittens, but like not gloves.
Yes.
I mean, back in the day, they'd be like leather choppers. I don't wear those. Mine are more techy, like fabric. But
when I did the winter camping last year,
yep,
I brought a pair of gloves, but I pretty much exclusively wore my leather choppers.
Sure.
And I brought 2 pairs of wool liners for them.
Gotcha.
And I really liked that. That worked pretty good. But yeah, you're right. I tend to wear gloves more.
But I like mitts more because my hands do get cold. But I have the more techie ones, not the
choppers.
The choppers that are leather and wool, which I'm sure are fine. That's just not what I like.
I like the choppers. I do.
Yeah.
I did get a new pair of gloves though for Christmas.
Ooh.
Yeah, I got a pair of the Ice Armor clam gloves.
Nice.
So I'm looking forward to trying those out. Got those.
Yeah, I think right now I have Frable ones. They're mitts. But I've used the Ice Armor ones before too. But they do wear out.
They do. Yeah, my Ice Armor mittens are pretty well shot. But they've got probably 8 years on them. You know, they got a little bit of miles.
Your choppers with wool and leather probably don't wear out.
No, I'll be able to give those to somebody in my will.
Yes. Okay, so this was a little piece of news that I thought was interesting. Dave Gans, and I saw this on Facebook because, of course, I follow him on Facebook, and he had a goal. And you know who Dave Gans is, right, Jay?
Yes, Jeff.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, maybe you're standing next to him at an ice fishing show, and he's going to ask you a question. You'll be like, I don't know who you are, right?
I would give him a hug. I'd say, Dave, may I hug you?
Yes. He'd probably say no, but, you know. Anyways.
But I would. I mean, he's a legend. Absolutely.
Yes.
We know
So Dave Gens said he had a goal to catch a walleye on each of the Great Lakes. And he reached that goal this year.
Wow.
Through the ice, I'm assuming, but I don't know that. Maybe just a Great Lakes. So he said, of course, Lake Superior was the last one he caught a fish on, the walleye on.
Really?
That's the closest. Yeah. So
Okay.
thought it was an interesting tidbit of information. Yeah, so I think that's what we have for current events, listener news. So Jay, should we move into fishing report?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's talk about that. It'll be fun.
So I'll talk about a little bit of my Mille Lacs outing, and then we can talk about our outing together.
Okay, sounds good.
So it's been, with Christmas and the holidays, I wouldn't say we took a week off, but we're only releasing one podcast for the 2-week time. So I went ice fishing on Mille Lacs, and there was about 4 or 5 inches of ice. It was enough for walking out, but you couldn't even bring 4-wheelers on at that point.
No.
And I was on the north side. On the south side, I think they were letting other people on, but on the north side, they were just letting people walk on versus 4-wheelers. So I only had like maybe 5 hours to fish, and we didn't catch anything. Saw a few fish caught, but it was pretty slow. But I was out in my normal spot and where I've caught fish before. I couldn't stay. We had we had some party to go to. I don't remember why. Some party, so I had to get home, so I didn't get the night bite. But yeah, so got out, used all my normal lures and tactics, and could not catch a fish. Marked them, but couldn't catch them. So, but it was good to be out.
I've heard this story a lot.
You've heard this story before? Is it like a rerun? Like we've talked about this before?
We should just do a clip, and you could just insert it.
Insert here. Jeff didn't catch a fish. Fishing report.
And I'm laughing with you, not at you. Just so you know that.
I mean, I was out. I was happy to be out. There was lots of people out. Some people caught fish. It was a good time. I had Noah with. I always love when I can get one of my kids to go with me. So, I mean, it helps when I can bribe them with going up to the ice shack, and we watched a movie the night before, slept overnight, and then went out fishing the next day.
Very cool.
Yeah. So, Jay, why don't you talk about our little excursion last week?
Yeah, so this came to be, we were talking on the show, 2 shows ago, or the last show, and I had a day off work, and I'm like, I'm going ice fishing. I'm just going to drive north until I find ice and go fishing. And so I found a little lake south of Minneapolis, but north of the Iowa border there, kind of off I-35. And Jeff and I were able to meet there and do some fishing. Oh my gosh, what a beautiful little lake. So I get there, and I drive down the hill kind of by where this lake is at. And my first glance, I'm like, oh crap, there's open water. Because I had never been to this lake. I didn't know anybody on this lake. I'm like, oh crap. open water. But the deal was, this lake must not have been froze over. I think when we had that big warm up and a lot of wind there, southern Iowa or northern Iowa, southern Minnesota, it broke it open. And then it must have refroze finally. And so I spud barted my way out, but there was like, 4 inches of ice?
Oh, I would say at least 4. I would guess 4. 5.
But really nobody had, I mean, there was some, you could tell some holes have been drilled recently to kind of check ice depth on the way out. But really it was largely undisturbed. But it did not stay that way.
No.
That place woke up. So by I was the first one there. And I drove from Iowa and I was the first one there. If that tells you anything. And then Jeff reminded me it was a weekday. And I'm like, oh, that explains it.
Yeah, it's a Thursday.
It was a Thursday. But we defiled the lake with holes. I would say we just drilled all over that lake. So did everybody else. But what a neat little lake. And the fishing was slow. It was slow. We struggled, but I don't think we were alone in struggling based on, we know some people were locals because they came out from, cabins on the lake or houses on the lake and, went to a spot and did not stay in those spots. They moved. Everybody was on the move. But it was such a beautiful day that you weren't just inclined to, we didn't even put up a house. We just moved around.
Yeah, it was great. You'd drill a few holes and you'd fish around and move on to the next spot. I don't know where the crappies were hiding because we covered pretty much the whole lake.
We did. We trolled. We certainly trolled. And we used, for an auger, we used my Eskimo pistol bit in my DeWalt drill setup. And I don't know how
that was perfect, Jay. It was perfect. I mean, it was the right weight. I've probably been more skeptical at using those kinds of rigs sometimes, but it worked great. It didn't walk. I think that's sometimes I've seen those. I don't know which brand.
The Eskimo, the first generation Eskimo pistol bit did not have a point.
Yeah.
The subsequent ones did.
So they'd walk, and that was annoying to me. I didn't like it when my ice auger starts walking towards my boots, but it worked great. And for what we needed, it was the right weight because we were walking. And yeah.
We went through one battery, but not till the very end of the day. I think I ended up drilling 8 holes in the new battery.
But to me, we did what we needed to do, so it was perfect.
Yeah, and I only use a 5 amp hour battery.
And my Strike Master certainly weighs more than twice as much as that rig. I don't know what it weighs exactly, but I was glad to not huff it around.
Yeah, I have no regrets on that. Now, my Eskimo propane auger will probably not get a lot of miles, especially given, based on my current weather temp, I don't know. By March, we may have 4 inches of ice here, so I could just use a hatchet.
Yeah, I will say, it was the perfect rig for what we were doing. Right?
Sure.
If you're on Lake of the Woods in March, it might not be the perfect rig for what we were doing.
It would drill 2 holes, probably 4.
Yes, but that's why you have the propane drill. So
exactly. Yeah, it was great. I don't know what else, Jeff. We tried everything.
We were fishing with mostly waxies.
Yes.
But we did try minnows, and we put out tip-ups.
And I tried some plastics.
Yep.
And I tried different spoons. I tried a small buckshot.
Yep.
I tried some stuff from Widowmaker. What's the name of that thing?
Cadis cane or whatever you said.
The Cadis cane. I tried the
Slab Seeker.
The Slab Seeker. It did not seek a slab, unfortunately.
Nope.
Yeah.
But we had a great day. I wasn't working.
So nice.
It was super nice outside, and I was glad to see you. We could hang out, and I don't know. I wasn't much to complain about. I mean, the ice was so clear and slick. You would not survive without some shoe grippy things. What are those things called?
I use Yak Tracks. I mean, there's all
Yak
sorts
Tracks.
of different versions of them, but the ones I use are the Yak Tracks. And my boots have the little flip down thing.
Yep.
But I did use that at first, and I'm like, no, this needs all wheel drive.
Yeah, and one of mine fell off. One of mine fell off, and I'm like, oh gosh, because I had the Yak Tracks too. They were required on that day.
Yes. Yeah, you wouldn't have gotten very far.
We actually saw somebody ice skate around the lake as we were fishing.
Yes, that was super cool.
I know it was.
They probably did not think the fact that we were drilling 9,000 holes in the lake was cool.
It was pretty until we showed up, and then we drilled a bunch of holes. So, all right. So that was a great
we should
outing.
give a shout out to, we were talking about this earlier. So I think it was Carter.
Yeah, he gave us
Connor or Carter. I want to say it was Carter.
Yeah.
Anyway, young man gave us some intel on the lake, pointed us towards a no-fail bluegill hole, and we did catch some fish there. So it did not fail. So I appreciate, we were talking about that earlier, like we just struck up a conversation, really nice man, and very, very friendly and willing to share information. So it was cool.
Yeah, and I had the same thing when I was up on Mille Lacs. I was walking on as some guys were leaving, which tells you I was there way too late. But, I knocked in. These guys are like, oh, yeah, we caught a couple over here, a couple nice ones. You can go over there. So, I mean, I find that people, if you talk to them, and you got to kind of approach people. Some people don't want to talk to you, right? Like, you got to kind of feel it out a bit. But yeah, I mean, my experience has been people are often friendly on the ice.
Well, I think the time to talk to people is when they're kind of in transit.
You're right.
So, like, they're walking to or by you, versus like they're sitting there intently jigging, and you're like walking up and going, "Yo, what's up?" They're less likely to maybe want to engage.
Well, and sometimes I'll, like, if I'm fishing in a spot and there's a couple people by me, like if I fish a spot long enough, I'll start to feel like you get a vibe for whether or not they're going to be open to you. If they've got some like kids and hanging out and fishing versus like, I don't know. I kind of sometimes get a vibe. I can go talk to those people, and sometimes I'm wrong. So yeah. Jason doesn't look convinced. He's just staring at me like
I'm visualizing you like walking over, like peering over a guy's shoulder, watching his flash. And go, yeah, jig.
That is not what you do. You do not get that close. You make sure you're seen from far away. I will say, if you're the person who puts 5 tip-ups around your perimeter to keep everybody away, do not approach those people.
Don't break the perimeter.
No, yes. Don't do that. All right. Well, I've talked about this a little bit, too. Like, different lakes actually have different cultures, right? Like, they kind of have different vibes. Like, on Mille Lacs, I feel like people get a lot closer than I would feel comfortable on some other lakes getting close to people.
Yeah.
They just do. I think people know the spots. They just do. There's still kind of a spacing that is reasonable, but the spacing is much smaller on Mille Lacs than like a smaller lake where you and 2 other people are fishing, and you spread out a bit more.
Yeah, I think, if it's a very busy lake with lots of activity, people do clump up more because there's only so much room.
Right.
Yeah, if you're in a super remote lake and there's one other person on there and you walk up and drill a hole 10 feet from them, it might feel different.
But how many times have you been like, I'm going to go fish here, and then you look up on the lake, oh, they're there. It's happened to me.
I mean, I think the example I would give is when I fished Mille Lacs last year with you.
Yeah.
I looked at the map. I'm like, okay, this is the axis Jeff used. I looked at the map, and I picked out a spot on the contour, and I'm like, I think I should fish here.
Right.
And it was within like 50 yards or less of where you're going to tell me to go.
Yes. Yep.
And we hadn't talked about it. You hadn't described it. I'm just like, I think this would be the spot. So if I did that with my limited skill and ability, 1,000 other people will too.
All right. Well, we talked a lot about Fishing Port, which is awesome, but we have a really good interview to get in and a couple other things to talk about from a gear perspective.
Okay, move on. What's next?
All right. So gear, just a few.
Decided to talk about fishing for a while.
No, I think it's awesome. But
I think 8 episodes in, and I finally was able to catch a fish and talk about how we did it.
I love it. I mean, if you're something else you'd like to share with your sage advice about what we did on that Thursday, let's get it in here.
I think the really important part, Jeff, is making sure the hook goes in the fish's mouth.
It's hard to catch a fish without doing that.
So that would be my number one advice.
Okay. All right.
Moving on.
All right. So gear. So I kind of confirmed. So these iFish Pros have been really big. I feel like they've been being pushed in the media, like YouTube and stuff. And I've kind of been like, I don't know. Like, I've seen some pretty serious fishermen using them. But I was out on Mille Lacs on my last trip, and somebody's like, yeah, we put an iFish Pro out, but it just froze up all the time. It just goes back to my, like, the basis. Maybe someday I'll be proven wrong, but, like, if you don't have a tip up where the reel goes in the water so it doesn't freeze, you're going to end in a bad place. It's just not going to work. In those iFish Pros, you have a line that goes, just a fishing line that goes into your hole. It freezes shut. You're just done. I don't know.
Yeah, it takes a lot more maintenance. So like same thing with the tip downs.
Yep.
You know, you see a lot of tip downs, and they work great for catching fish. Don't get me wrong. But I think the time of year we tend to fish more is when it's super cold out because it's ice fishing. And, you know, they freeze up. They freeze up.
Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't use them or they're bad things. I'm still going to go back to like my beaver dam style tip ups that the reel goes in the water.
Yeah, so I would say if you're looking for a tip up type thing and you are on a limited budget and you want one type that's going to always work, then you want the type, a beaver dam style where that spool is in the water.
Yep.
Exactly. And all the other contraptions out there will have times it's too cold to work, which is kind of a basic thing in ice fishing. It gets cold. There's another device that will never sponsor us.
That's right. All right. I do feel like I needed some blue tips, though. I know you recently bought these, but I was feeling like I had my tip up out, and you know the windows fog up, and you're looking up all the time trying to see it. Those blue tips are really a cool thing. So
Matt bought one. He was telling me, he gave me a fishing report today on the way up.
Oh,
and he goes, they set up the blue tip they got at the ice fishing show, and his boy recorded himself saying, "Dad, go check the tip up," and that's the sound that they have for when or something like that, you know, something similar to that. So when the thing goes up, it's that's his boy yelling at him to go check the tip up.
Go check the tip up. You should say like Jeff caught another fish, right?
Yeah. Missed another one. Missed another one.
And my final gear was my Christmas gear item.
What is this?
So
I'm looking. You guys can't see me, but I'm looking on the Zoom call we do with Jeff.
It's a fishing brag board. So Aaron had this made. So I am at the top, of course, and have caught 10 fish. But then there's like other people. So I can put this in my ice shack, and you can see who's winning. And I have bobbers for like pegs.
Okay.
So every time you catch a fish, you move it down the peg. And so in this example, I've caught 10 fish.
Because you get the handicap?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So
that is really cool.
I'll put a picture of it out on Facebook, but it's just a brag board. I've seen lots of different brag boards, but just a way to keep track of, you know, who caught the most fish. Maybe sometimes when it's only one, you'd say you caught 5 or whatever. But
that's super cool.
But it does say life is better on the water. Seems like a good thing.
Well, yeah. Yeah, when you're ice fishing, life's better on the ice. If you're on the water, you have a problem.
Well, you could be on the water.
On the water with the ice underneath the water. Where it belongs.
You don't want to be fully in the
water. Underneath the ice.
On the water.
Ice underneath the water. What did I say? Did I say ice underneath?
I don't know.
You want to be on top.
So, Jay, I think we're ready for our topic.
We are. We're ready to talk with Max Losche, the international man of mystery, who runs Strike and Catch website, and we'll go to that interview now. All right, we're here today with Max Losche from Strike and Catch. He actually lives in Sweden, and we're really excited to have him on the show today to talk to us what he knows about ice fishing and also about the differences between ice fishing where he lives and ice fishing where we live. Welcome, Max.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Very excited about it. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to differences. Very, very interesting topic indeed.
We'll find out, Jason. We'll find out if there's more difference between Iowa fishing and Minnesota fishing, or fishing here and fishing in Europe, right?
I suspect there may be more differences between us and Europe, but I don't know. So I was looking, Max, at your website of Strike and Catch, and I found some really interesting things on here. And what I really like is the fact that this, Max, you set some goals. So I'm looking at your personal life goals
right
on your website. And I tell you, that takes a lot of guts to throw that on a website. Your personal life goals: catch a wild carp 40 pounds plus. That's a big carp. A 30-pound plus pike. You're going to make writing and fishing a full-time income, which go for it. That's phenomenal. Travel and fish the world, be the best husband to your wife and the best and most present dad to your daughters, and well-trained abdominal. What's that last one?
You don't even know what it is, right? Abdominal abs, like a six-pack, you know.
Oh, six-pack.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never had that on a list of mine in my whole life.
It's something my wife jokes about that I will never get, and so I put it on the list, just to spite her a little bit.
It's always nice to have that marital support, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, about your fishing, what you do, and so on?
Yeah, sure. Well, you kind of summarized it well already. I run a fishing site, strike and catch, and that's basically my bread and butter now. I actually quit my job in November, so my day job, and I'm not really there yet, like full-time income wise. Whatever I wrote there on my about page, but it's on a good way, and there's a lot of writing involved, obviously, but I enjoy writing, and I have this huge passion for fishing that we share, I guess. So I thought, well, I got into SEO a couple of years ago, technical writing for Google and whatnot, and I combined that with my fishing interest, and so far it works pretty well. Just published my 200th article, actually, and there's a lot more to come. Otherwise, I've been living here in southern Sweden since 2002 or 2001, ish. I don't remember actually. So it's 20 years now, roughly. And it's I come from Germany originally. We don't have ice fishing there; it's too warm. And so I started ice fishing actually when my mom bought the house here in Sweden. When we started to spend our holidays here, and I loved it. I mean, it kind of looks a bit like the northern states, environmental wise, like Minnesota, Iowa. Lots of forests, lots of lakes and rivers. So I love that. I come from Berlin in Germany, which is kind of a huge city, and it's you get tired of the concrete and all the people, and here it's just, we live in a small town, and it's just all nature, and the lifestyle is a bit slower, not as stressful. And so I kind of stuck to Sweden, after high school, and just got into fishing, like a lot. I mean, as much as a family with 2 kids allows for it, and a job, obviously. And so I do a lot of fishing, open water fishing in general. Not as much ice fishing anymore because of the changing climate, actually. The winters get shorter and shorter here. But I've done my fair share of it. My back can attest to that as well. and my stamina, which is not as good anymore as it used to be when I was 20 something. So whenever there is a cold winter, I try to head out to a lake, inland lake, or we can actually fish the coastal waters in the Baltic Sea, which is kind of cool. It's kind of saltwater fishing for pike and perch. I mean, brackish water, but we like to call it saltwater fishing. So that's kind of unique actually in the world as well. And that's what I do. Otherwise, I just fish year round, mostly in open waters. And when I do that, it's mostly in river, river environments, because we have a lot of tributaries here that lead, that empty into the sea. And obviously, there's a lot of fish, migrating up and down those year round, basically. So I'm pretty well located as an angler. I can say that.
That sounds awesome. So when you ice fish, and let's start with the Baltic Sea, because that would be.
There's so many questions. So
I know.
Where do I start? Like
you're clearly, the Baltic Sea doesn't freeze over completely, so you're on an edge, or does it freeze over completely?
It used to. I mean, it's if you know the geographics, it's kind of more like a giant inland lake, more or less. It's like trapped between the Nordic countries, Sweden, Finland, and then Poland, on the southern eastern side, and then a little bit of Russia as well, and then Germany in the south. Germany doesn't get the ice anymore, but our end of the Baltic Sea is really just a giant bay, if you want to call it that. So we used to get ice here, pretty stable, pretty thick ice during the winter.
So what's pretty thick ice for you guys? What do you see as pretty thick?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, if we talk Baltic Sea, it used to be maybe up to 10 inches, that's thicker in the base.
You can't drive on that.
No, we don't. I mean, we do that in the inland lakes. There we would get back in the day, we'll get 20, 30 inches, in good winters.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty heavy, pretty, cold winters, really. I remember those when we got here to Sweden first. Those are gone, though, at least here in the southern areas. Now we're lucky if we get any ice at all, actually. So last year we had like 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks of ice, fishable ice. So that's pretty much all we get nowadays,
So what I'm hearing from you, Max, is you need to move north.
Yes, if I wanted to ice fish more, I would have to do that. Yes, at least a couple of 100 miles. Yeah, the climate zones have shifted. Definitely.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you drive inland, a couple of hours, even in our regions, it's colder, in the forest areas than here near the coast. And then most winters you still have ice, but it's just a shorter season nowadays.
So what kind of gear do you use for ice fishing in the Baltic? So, or just even ice fishing there? Like what you've done a lot of research on I'm sure on the way we fish over here with the equipment and all that and the types of augers. Is it similar? Is it different? Is it as well established and developed in Sweden, the gear and all that? Or are they on the same curve as we are? Because we've seen a ton of innovation, I would say, in the last 10 years in the United States with our gear. Is that going on over there too, or is it different?
No, it's actually a very interesting comparison, because I wasn't aware of the differences either when I started to ride. Last winter I started to cover ice topics, and then I thought like, okay, I ride like based on the European ice fishing, and it's like, oh no, this doesn't work at all. Those guys, they don't fish like that. I mean, there are certain similarities, but it's pretty, essentially it's pretty different. So I had to rewrite my old articles and then just do a ton of research and adapt my writing towards the US and Canada as well. I think a lot of your old techniques come actually from Scandinavia, given that so many Swedes and what do I know, Norwegians and stuff moved over there.
Oh yeah, it's
like Swedish pimple, right? I mean, literally, that's that's literally our thing here. That's like the old-fashioned way for us to just pimpling perch, our European perch. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that we do. That the old timers. It's like when you start ice fishing, you pimpling for perch.
Pimpling for perch. I love it.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, pimple is actually, I don't know the origins of the word, but I think it's actually a Swedish word in itself. I don't think it's an English term. Pimple. And pimple would just actually, I mean, for us, it's just a tiny spoon. Like a pimple, right? So. Then there's variations, I guess, but
so that's an interest. So for us, the Swedish pimple, if we say that, it's the Swedish pimple. It's that silver spoon. So if I'm hearing you correctly, it's just a generalized term for a small spoon.
Pimpling, yeah, exactly. It's more about the method than the actual lure. I would say, yeah, we pimple with jigs, with single hooks and maggots, whatever. Pimple. I mean, we have those tiny. I think you have those too. I haven't really covered that. Those tiny short pimple rods. Like really. It's not the jigging rods that you use for walleye or perch or whatever. It's more like just a couple of, like maybe a foot long. And for us, he over here, you just use those actually to to pimple with. I have seen those also over in the US, but it's more like in movies. I don't know if you actually use those anymore.
So, Jeff, is he talking about the schoolies?
Maybe, yeah. I know. I mean, when I first started ice fishing in the 80s,
Right, yeah,
in the 80s, quite literally. My first ice fishing experience was we had like a wood rod, like it was a wood dowel, right? And it just had like this, I don't know, probably fiberglass, very thin, short rod that would stick out the end. And we'd actually just have two little posts, and you'd wrap your monofilament line around it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it wasn't even like a schoolie rod was like an advancement, right? A schoolie rod, they talk about those. It has like a plastic kind of very crude reel that you use. But this was even before that, like where we just basically had a stick with some line on it, right? And it wasn't very long, and you wouldn't fish very deep.
Right.
Now we have hundreds of dollars of, carbon fiber, carbon or
oh yeah,
things that you can use, right? Like that are super awesome. But yes, back in the day we would have that. It is interesting though that like I was thinking about, we call it pimpling, like it's almost like we're into the rap music here, because there's, I got pimp my ride and pimp your
yeah.
Like, I wonder where that came from.
I don't know that I'm where you're at, Jeff.
Go on. You can pimp out your stuff, like maybe that's a different
pimp
word.
Your perch.
Perch, I don't know.
Okay, so you're pimpling for perch on the Baltic Sea with your rod. And so do you have gas auger, electric auger, hand crank auger, dynamite? What do you use to get to the hard substance on top?
Yeah, and the pimpling thing is really just, basic. I mean, no, if you're into sport fishing, you don't really do that. It's just like, like you guys said, that's how you start out, and then you basically throw it in the toilet after a while because you get tired of it. For drilling, we use mostly hand augers. Actually, I know you guys use those gigantic gas augers, or I don't know how you power them, electric ones as well, more and more, I guess.
Yep, battery operated.
You bet, right. Up in the north, people use those here and there, but it's not really a big market. We have another classic Swedish invention, or is it Finnish? The Mora, the Mora drills, the Mora augers.
Yeah,
that's
Swedish. Yeah,
our stuff.
I think it's
based off that. Our stuff is still based off of that. If you get the really gas augers aren't a thing anymore, right? I mean, they are, but they're going out of favor for sure. Like,
all right,
you go to the store, you're gonna find one gas auger and like 10 electric ones, right? But but if I have a Strike Master one, and it has a 40-volt head, which is pretty big and stuff. But the blade and stuff, they're still those Mora blades, right? That's what they come from, and that's what I used as a kid, was the hand auger with the Mora blade. So I think those still come over from Rapala brings those over. So
exactly,
over where you guys are too. So
yeah. So we have we have those. I mean, most of our fishing, that would be enough with a. I don't know the diameters. It's like 150, 200 mil. I don't know how much that is in inches.
That means nothing to me.
All right, I know.
Someday we'll convert, but so far
let me get my Google conversion.
All right, I think that's about 8 to 10 inches. 20, 200 mil, 20 centimeters. I know you wouldn't believe how much time I had to spend converting my brain from centimeters to inches and meters to feet and kilos to pounds. I'm like, oh man, now I'm kind of used to it. But for us, it's the same way as for you, with the metric system. We're very used to that. And then but I learned quickly that I have to write everything in pounds and inches and feet. And ounces as well, right? It's different.
It's different, yes.
Jeff gives his fish length in millimeters when he catches a small one, so it sounds.
Oh, that's sophisticated.
I caught a 30 millimeter walleye. Like,
whoa, 30! Wow, that's yeah, all right. I guess no one knows what you're talking about anyway, so
no, right.
it just sounds cool.
It sounds cool. Yeah.
That would actually be like just over an inch, so that's very tiny.
Well, people do picture their like things with their fish when they hold it up 10 feet away from them to make it look really big. So we'll just say this is a 30 millimeter, and it'll be
yeah, exactly. Yeah, neat trick.
Yes.
Yeah. So we that's why all sweets are so muscular, because we use good old hand augers. So and I guess you know what happens when the blades go dull. That's I've had those in the beginning. It's terror, and you try to drill a few holes and then you just give up and go home. And so we always have a spare, of well sharpened blades in our bags when we head out. But I mean, like I say, if we have ice of 10 or 15 inches, I mean, an electric auger wouldn't really make sense over here. Not to us at least. It's totally fine doing that manually.
I guess that's what I get for ice a lot of times in Iowa, and I still prefer the electric auger. Even though there's a natural jigging action when I'm gasping for air, I prefer to not do that. So for pike on the Baltic, what would be your setup? What kind of bait you using? What's your tactic? How are you? What are you doing?
That's also very interesting, because when I started to write ice topics for strike and catch, I didn't know about tip ups. Actually, I didn't know what that was. I mean, most pike fishing, in the US is done with tip ups, right? And then thinking about it, that's actually a more advanced form of what we're using. Actually, once again, even though this is again basic, gear that either very old people use or just beginners, So we don't have tip ups. What we have is we just basically have a wooden stick that you ram into the ice, or a pile of snow if there's snow. And then on that stick is a tiny little spool. It's not a reel; it's just a spool. And on that spool is some basic ice line, and then on the stick is a little, that's kind of your tip up flag, but it's made out of metal. It's like a flexible metal arm with a little red tip, or it can be a ping pong, a table tennis ball as well, depending on how you do them. It's just a visual indicator. And then so you let down the bait with a hook, and then you do a little loop in the line, and then you put the loop onto the red indicator, and then it's kind of hanging down like that, in a bow. And then when the pike, obviously when it takes the bait, the thing goes off and kind of wiggles in the air like your flags, Okay. But we don't have those beaver dam style tip ups that you use. For us, everything is like above the ice. The entire setup. So that's. I mean, you kind of see the similarity there. Maybe you had those two like 100 years ago in the US when they started to emerge. Beaver dams and the likes, we don't have it all here in Europe, so we don't have conventional tip-ups. What we do instead, if you get serious about ice fishing for pike or zander, which is the bigger cousin of the walleye, that we ice fish a lot here as well. A lot bigger, yeah. Like we're talking several feet actually.
Wow.
At max length. Yeah, I mean, we have fish that go well over, especially now that seem to like the warmer waters. They go well over 40 inches, so.
Holy cow.
Yeah, and then like 20, 25 pounders, pretty I mean, you don't just catch them like that, but you see them a lot on the internet and stuff. Really big zander coming both from through the ice and in open water. Really big fish. So I think they're kind of starting to push away the pike a bit in certain waters.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think they really like this environment. It used to be a little cold for them here, but now they really established themselves. So those we fish with. I think what you can compare it with over in the US would be dead sticks. Like short ice rods.
Mm-hmm.
Ours tend to be a bit like heavier. We don't, ours are like medium heavy to heavy even. So it's a little, stronger setups, and we use either bait runner reels, or what you would call bait feeder reels.
Sure.
Okay.
Or big, how do you call those? Now I lost the word for it. What are the old Abu Garcia reels called? The
bait casters, like big caster.
Yeah,
reels.
yeah. Exactly. Yeah, they're not really bait casters, but you catch my drift, right?
I've heard them called level winds, maybe level wind reels.
I don't know. It's like this ancient. I can Google it up maybe, but
Okay.
let's call them bait casters just
Sure,
for the
okay.
sake of it. Yeah. And we basically used the flag indicators from those old tip-up style rods, but we just use them as a rod holder actually.
Sure.
And then we have normal mono or braid line on those. And I think basically we use what you would refer to as a quick strike rig.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. For us, it's just a normal pike leader, actually, or bait leader.
Yep.
We don't call it that, but it's exactly the same kind of leader or rig that we use. 2 trebles, on a thick fluorocarbon or wire leader. Yeah.
Okay.
And then, depending on if your morals are okay with it, you use live bait or dead bait. If you're not okay with using live bait, we use big shiners. Here we call them roach or rudd. Yeah, European shiners basically. And you can also use small perch actually, where they're available. It's mostly shiners though, very common live baits for pike and zander. And for dead bait, we can use, we use a lot of mackerel or herring. I do that a lot actually because it's so much smoother than having to catch and keep live bait at home all the time. So that's basically, fishing wise, it's the same. It's just the gear is a little bit different for those bigger predators. So
for shelters or shanties or traps or whatever, what do you got? Do people just are you sitting on a Menards pail over there? Do you
they don't have Menards or what? IKEA maybe. I don't know. IKEA make
only IKEA, yeah.
An IKEA 5-gallon pail over there, or what?
That's it. That's another big difference. We don't have shelters or ice houses, shacks at all. I mean, we have those in the north, but they're very rare, and it's more like a tourist attraction. They're not really used for fishing all that much. A little here and there, but it's really not a thing. But here in the south, we just have chairs basically. We have those fishing chairs, and we sit outside, which is a bit dumb actually because you're totally exposed. And most of the time freeze our balls off or whatever you have that can freeze off. I actually I do a lot of carp fishing as well, so I bring my what we call a bivy, which is a carp fishing tent, an advanced kind of tent, which is really easy to pop up. But it's not meant for ice fishing and all. I just bring it for when I bring the kids for some shelter, We don't use heaters much either. Like you have the Mr. Buddy heaters or whatever, very popular. We don't use. I mean, now we started to use fish finders. We don't have the what are those called, vexillars?
Yep.
And that seemed to be extremely common, even though they look like a relic from the Second World War to our eyes. It's like, what is this? What the hell is this?
We think the same thing. They're like from
all right.
Yes, no, totally.
Yeah, and then came the modern what do you call them?
Like the Panoptics
sonars and stuff. Deepers. Those people use a lot now on the ice too, but it used to be just that you either your lake very well, or you let down a lead on a line and check the depth. That's we don't have the kind of lake sizes that you have for the most part. We fish much smaller venues over here, so it's not. I mean, all the technology is, and the shelters is not really necessary, because we don't do much night fishing either, or overnighting. It's like day trips, and then you go home and warm up, and then you head out again, because it's, I mean, most of our lakes are just like maybe an hour or two away from home, so it's not really like giant trips like you guys do.
So I want to try to get to this quick before we run out of time. But do you carp fish then through the ice? Have you done that? Is that a thing, or your carp fishing is more in the summer?
It's a good question. I've never done it through the ice.
Okay. So that's
I know it's possible, but I don't think it's very productive. So we keep that for summer.
We'll let that go. I wasn't sure, and I thought I'd ask. So
would be cool to try.
Jeff
but
occasionally can catch a carp through the
all
ice.
Right. You guys have way more than we do, so it wouldn't be as easy to catch them here.
I don't think I've ever caught a carp through the ice. I don't know. So I was curious. We were talking about Xander. It was funny because there was who wouldn't want to catch a bigger walleye? Because the biggest walleye, like here, 32 inches is like, trophy. Like I think that's about as big, maybe 34, Jay. I don't know, 32, 30. That's like fish of a lifetime. You're never going to see another one, right? But 40 inches, that's pretty interesting that you could get like a cousin to the walleye that's up to 40 inches. The walleye here is like revered. You put them on your walls, you get one that big. It's an awesome fish. But there was interesting. This was probably 10 years ago or something. There was actually kind of a controversy because some of the local restaurants were selling a walleye, and it was actually like they DNA.
I read about that.
Something, but there was kind of a big deal, right? That like, they're serving Xander, and you couldn't really tell the difference. But I don't know. It's kind of interesting.
They're very closely related. I think that at one point there used to be one species and then they just split up. And I actually covered that topic in a few articles. If you Google Xander versus walleye, you should actually see my article on the top 3 results somewhere. And then I see. There's a lot of traffic for those articles because it's very when people hear about Xander or walleye here on the European side, they get very, very interested in that because they basically look the same, and but the size difference is so vast, so it's really interesting topic. And I know a few lakes in North Dakota who actually have Xander. Tip.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that at all.
Oh yeah, I did an article on that too. I talked to the guy who is like they have like a little club there, like a Xander club, or like a association or something, and they actually imported them. I think it was in the 80s or 90s, something like that, and they just stocked the lake with it. And they kind of, multiplied, and now it's they have a pretty decent population there, even though they don't get as big as the European ones. But it's in North Dakota, it's a pretty popular thing apparently.
They like stuck a Xander in their pocket, flew over here and put it in the lake, and
yeah, kind of. Yeah, I mean,
a little bit on the way over.
I don't know if TSA would approve of that.
Yeah, apparently it was an official governmental backed thing, like very official, and everyone was in on it. But then when they wanted to do it in other states and regions, they said no, because it would knock out the walleye populations, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure it would.
That's not very popular.
So what would the limit on Xander? So like if you're fishing, is it mainly catch and release? Do people catch to eat? What's kind of the culture around the catch and release? Or
that's another very good question. I was very surprised when I learned about your bag limits on everything and how much fish you actually take home. We don't do that at all, but then again, we don't have the stock sizes that you guys have, and I mean, when you fish crappie and you take home like 10 or 20, we're like, oh my God, they're emptying the lakes. But obviously it's kind of, I mean, from my understanding, it's kind of sustainable, for those smaller species, at least. I mean, not everywhere, I guess, it's really difficult to say, but for us, it's really like, I mean, we do like the English, we basically catch and release everything. We take home the occasional trout or pike or perch, sure. And like recreational fishers, they will take home more, obviously. But if you're like a sport fisherman, catch and release is really a respectable thing to do around here. But again, I mean, our stocks look very different from yours, and
sure.
We've had a lot of depletion, in various waters. So I think here it makes a lot more sense, because we don't have the kind of fish management that many of your states luckily have, which is a sad thing. Here it's more like, okay, it's nature, whatever, takes care of itself, that kind of approach. So it's not really regulated. You buy a license or not, and that's basically it, So a lot of catch and release here. Okay. If you're aware of, fish populations and their future, then it's just a sensible thing to do most of the time.
Okay. So you don't have then a favorite northern or pike or Xander recipe that you can
Xander is actually quite that is quite a popular food fish as well. Pike not so much. It's super bony. Well, you guys know it, I guess. But
yeah.
It's not really a steelhead or a salmon, So
sure.
But Xander gets served a lot here in restaurants. Real Xander, not walleye or knockoff. And it sells for a lot of money, actually. So there are some, a few commercial fishermen who catch them and sell them to restaurants. Other than that, I mean, typical Swedish summer food would be a freshly grilled perch with some mashed potatoes or something. I don't know. I eat very little fish.
Okay.
Other than that, paradoxically, fish is not as popular as you would suspect in Sweden, other than the weird farmed Norwegian salmon that I personally despise because they're full of toxins, but those sell everywhere, obviously, because they're farmed. Yeah, that's what the typical Swede will buy for Christmas or various holidays, sadly.
Well, and we still have to be careful with what we eat. I mean, there's there's mercury in the water and in the fish.
Yeah.
There are recommendations that don't eat too much and all that kind of stuff. So,
of course.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground. So, Max, we always ask our visitors to tell us their best ice fishing story or legend as we conclude our interview. So I suppose I should have warned you of this, but I prefer to not warn people. And that way they just tell that, if you're sitting around and you're having a few adult beverages with a group of friends and fishing comes up and you're talking ice fishing, what's the story that you're going to tell? What's your legend or your go-to story about ice fishing?
Well, there are many, but it would have to be my my personal best pike. I think that's that's worth telling because it was a pretty epic trip. So I was actually guiding back in the day. It was like 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. I did some, occasional guiding in the summer and the winter time for tourists, mostly German tourists, as I, know the language.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and they love Sweden for the fishing, it's overcrowded in Germany, so they come here to relax and fish. And then when they don't catch anything, they just get a guide, catch a few pikes, they're super happy. So we do that and we charge them a lot of money for it. And so there was this guy who wanted to, ice fish for pike. So I say, sure, we'll go on my local lake. We lived in another city back then, my wife and I, and we had a lot of lakes, just like urban lakes, right in the city. Perfect small lakes, a lot of forage, a lot of big pike in them. So it's easy pickings, right? So we head out and it was like horrible weather. It was like just above zero. And there was like this like an inch or two of water on the ice. So the ice was thick and stable, but it was really like horrible to walk around on it.
So when you say zero, you're talking 0 Celsius, right?
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, yes, Celsius. No.
So yeah, which would be about 32 degrees in Fahrenheit.
That's what I was like.
Right,
above zero, water
above freezing, right? Yes. Exactly. Sorry, yeah. Yeah, Fahrenheit versus Celsius. That's another. Yes. Great topic. So anyways, it was warm for a couple of days, but it's like you can probably relate. You get those southern winds, and suddenly the pressure is changing, and you think like, yeah, that's like the perfect weather for pike. It just gets them going. So we head out and we start to catch fish immediately. A couple of live shiners, four rods each. We head out. And then the guy catches an 18-pound pike, and he's like super happy, like really nice fish. I don't know, like 35, 38 inches, something like that. Yeah, nice winter fatty. And then our pike got a bit bigger than yours. Yeah. Sorry, yeah. I forgot to mention that.
Everything's bigger. It
is. Yeah. That's usually everything in America
is bigger. This is maybe propaganda. But anyway.
No, I think Sweden has one of the best pike waters in the world. Actually, we got really big fish here. So we used to those 40 plus. Inchers, yeah, we catch them every season, 50 inches sometimes.
No.
Yeah. Wow. There was just a guy. So a little off topic. I think it was still open water. Was out with his boat trolling, and he catches this 14 kilo pike, which is like 32 pounds or something. And it was actually a 50 incher, so like ginormous fish, and it's like, whoa, like biggest fish of the season. And made like headlines, in various internet forums and Facebook. Yeah, so we got them here, and so back to the story. Yeah, so we catch a few small ones. And kind of all wet because of the water on the ice, and then I get a bite, and usually I would let the customer take the rods, but he was just so happy after his 18-pounder, so he said like, no, go ahead, it's fine, you can take it, it's probably another smallie, and then I hook up to this like this real big fish, like heavy. Like I was like, "Whoa, this is a really big fish." And he's like, "Yeah, sure, but it's probably not another 18-pounder, right?" I know it wasn't, but it wasn't even bigger fish. So the cool thing was, as there was ice and there was water on the ice, and the ice was like completely transparent, So that's a really cool thing when the pike comes up, under the surface, and you suddenly look through the ice and you see like this kind of tree under the ice, it's like, oh my God, what is it? The hole is too, we don't get it through the hole, and so we drilled two more holes, 10 inch holes. So it was really like it turned out it actually had a giant bait fish in his belly, like maybe a small carp, or what we call bream here. It's like a smaller carp fish, usually weighs a pound or two. So, that adds a little weight. And the fish was just, it's the one maybe you saw the picture on my about page. That's the one, the picture is very old and, and the quality is bad, but you see how thick it was, like I never measured the girth actually, but it was a real big fish. And so we got it through the 3 holes that we made kind of a triangle after like 10 minutes. Really a horrible 10 minutes because it's like you have to hold the fish and the other guy drills and it's like, is it still there? Is it still there? Yeah, all right. And then we get it out and we weigh it and we have like a weigh sling and everything. We put the fish in and my 22 my old 22-pound scale bottomed out, right? It's like, what the hell? Okay, 22. So what do we do now? He's like, I just call it 22. I'm like, no, I want to have the exact weight, I call a friend. He's like, gets down. Yeah, we put it back in the water, actually. We call a friend and he gets down with a digital scale, which back then was really a new thing, so I just had a manual one and his one was like 50 pounds, I think, the scale. So that was definitely enough. And it topped out at, I think it was 26 pounds or 25 something. Wow. And it was really short. It was like 43 inches only, quote unquote.
3 inches.
Yeah, but for a weight like that, it's really, it looked like a little pig, so I was like, whoa! It's like, wow, that's the biggest pike I ever caught. And the guy was like, damn it, I should have taken the rod. I was like, yeah, you should have, but you didn't, right? So it's my fish. Sorry. Yeah. So yeah, and then. Well, we kind of, we continued a little, but I mean, 18 and 26 pounds, that's hard to beat. For a single, we were just out a couple of hours actually. Wow. And it was like the perfect ice fishing trip, despite all the water. And it was, I was back in 2009 and I still haven't caught a bigger one yet. So that's actually one of my goals there with a 30 pounder, because I feel that I kind of have to beat this one now.
Well, when you do, call us and we'll interview you about
yes.
Yeah, sure. I can't promise that it's through the ice though.
If it's not through the ice, I don't want to hear about it.
Exactly. So I better make it through the ice, right?
So I'll lay down that challenge. Maybe what you should do is you need to adjust your goal of saying, that open water and then hard water.
Yeah, even better. Then you have even more goals to go for. You fish even more.
You need more fishing goals, and you can tell your wife that we laid that one down.
All right, she'll probably understand.
Have to rise to that challenge.
Tons of influence there. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, but that's actually that's a good challenge. Actually, I accept that.
Yeah. Well, Max, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was awesome.
We encourage everybody to go check out your site there at Strike and Catch, and we'll put the site up on our page as well, so people have that for you.
Much obliged.
Well, that was awesome, Jeff. That was sure fun talking to him. I don't know how long this show is going to be because we talked to him for quite a while, like almost an hour. So some of it may be on the podcast, or we may put some more on the Facebook or on our. Who knows? Well, more to come when Jeff edits. Which I appreciate that Jeff edits, because I don't have to. Otherwise, we'd be still on episode 2.
2, yes.
From season 1.
From season 1. I will say those first ones are probably rougher than our current ones. So
yeah, probably. That's okay though. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Tight lines.
Cheers.
5. You've been listening to the Hard Water Fishing Show with Jeff and Jason.
Say goodbye.
One of the most unique podcasts on the planet, where we talk about tactics, gear, and ice fishing legends. We'll be back soon.
Bye-bye.
Till then, signing off.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.